Welcome to CUBE Conversations, everybody. This is Dave Vellante with Stu Miniman at Wikibon headquarters, and we're going to talk about the move from virtualization to hybrid cloud. Chad Sakich is here. He's joining us from up north. Chad, it's great to see you today. Thanks very much for coming on theCUBE.
Dave, it's my pleasure, Stu. It's always good to see you guys.
So Stu, I want to start with you. For years, we've done research on virtualization, generally, VMware specifically. In particular, the early years of our research focused on integration, because storage, as we know, was a problem, right? The first VMworld I ever went to, I said, wow, storage really is breaking, as a result of all this virtualization. So the community, the industry, the ecosystem really stepped up, and the focus was on integration. We did a lot of work there, but we've now shifted our emphasis.
It's that next step to really help the orchestration and help really transform what IT staffs are doing, which is rather than managing what Chad would call the cylinders of excellence inside the organization, we're really talking about building cloud architects and allowing the business to focus on the applications and have more agility to deliver for the business itself.
So Chad, I wonder if we could bring you into the conversation here.
Yeah, of course.
In thinking about, you and I have spoken many, many times about this so-called journey, and you've sort of laid it out. I remember years ago just chalk talking with you, and a lot of what you talked about has come true. The whole notion of storage moving toward sort of this invisible resource. But I wonder, where are our customers on the maturity model? Did they really accept and understand that virtualization is not cloud, it's not hybrid cloud, and they've got to do more work? I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
So in my experience, and it's a joy being here, but it's also a joy being on the road with customers all around the world, and the biggest of the big and the smallest of the small. Every single one of them invariably is trying to build a capability which is a robust hybrid cloud model, which again, you can drop buzzword bingo and come right down to, we're trying to build a self-service portal, high degree of automation, all the way through the infrastructure part of the stack, all the way up to the PaaS and the SaaS services that they offer internally. The reality of it is that the problems of the past that you described largely are cracked. There's still times where people suffer from storage or networking problems, but the name of the game now is that inside the enterprise, they want infrastructure as a service. The agility comes from the management and orchestration domain, and there's really two dominant ecosystems. So your research was focused on the VMware ecosystem, namely the vRealize suite, but there's another ecosystem which is appearing alongside, which is the OpenStack ecosystem. Both of those things are now really the things that are driving the ultimate value of infrastructure, which is to be invisible. That hasn't changed, Dave, from the first time you and I talked about it. The idealized infrastructure is simply invisible, provisioned, automated, and consumed by an application. And that means you have to break down all of those human silos that exist. That sounds like the beginning of a bad horror movie, breaking down human silos. And then we turn them into Soylent Green. No, but in all seriousness, I mean, literally I was talking with one of our biggest customers in the world in the finance vertical, was actually at the briefing center in Hopkinton on Friday, and they're already 80–90% virtualized on their x86 workloads. So that's ground that, hey, victory achieved. We saved a lot of CapEx. Now, how do we get out of the business of provisioning storage? How do we get out of the business of provisioning a VM? How do we defer that all and do it programmatically in a way which is analogous to the public cloud models that exist? Can we do it while retaining control of capital assets on the ground?
So that brings up two questions. So when you think about things like VAI, and now soon to be vVols, do those things still matter?
The real challenge is, how do I as a chef make an awesome meal so it's not just good but great? And that's frankly about higher up in the stack, the management and orchestration layer, creating the right service catalog. That's the recipe for a good meal.
Now, the second question that came out of the discussion that you had earlier was this notion of multi-cloud. So it seems like the world, whether it's VMware, whether it's OpenStack and varieties of OpenStack, whether it's AWS through its API, Google, Azure, et cetera, it looks like we're headed toward a world of multi-clouds.
Absolutely.
How will EMC play in that world? What are your thoughts there?
Many customers that I'm finding increasing, the larger ones, are actually building two on-premise private clouds as part of their hybrid cloud strategy, one that's focused on VMware for the domain of pets, of workloads that are built with high expectations of infrastructure resilience. And then literally right beside it, they have a parallel project where they're building one that uses OpenStack as the M&O layer that they're using for new applications that they're building on top of, the applications that are more like cattle, using the classic pets and cattle meme, right? So the thing that's interesting is that means then you have at the top layer the vCloud APIs and you have the OpenStack APIs just on-prem. Like, this isn't a hypothetical. This is a customer that spoke at the OpenStack Summit in November and that I interact with pretty frequently. So for them, they're very interested in what are you doing in the domain of management and orchestration above infrastructure as a service. There's lots of interesting players in this domain. In this case, that customer was using a company called Scalar, which is a startup that's focused on multi-cloud management abstraction layers. The other interesting thing is that there's actually a layer above that, which is the bottom layer of the app stack. So you can think of Cloud Foundry. Its bottom layer has this thing called BOSH. BOSH will go and it'll provision an OpenStack environment. It'll provision AWS. It'll provision vCloud APIs. It'll also go directly to vCenter if you're not using the vRealize suite. And if you think about it, that is, so long as you're using Cloud Foundry, it is an inter-cloud abstraction layer, right? So I think that you asked the question of what are we going to do about this? We're going to play at this in multiple ways across the federation. Number one, Pivotal will continue to expand what BOSH does around deploying paths to multiple clouds in an open cloud fashion, number one. Number two, VMware will continue to expand the vRealize automation tool set, which already supports AWS, to continue to expand out and support other things, including OpenStack. And then number three, EMC will continue to expand the capability both organically and inorganically of providing inter-cloud federated services. That'll appear in a couple of forms, Dave. So the first form that'll show up will be that we're embracing the public cloud model so that we can say there's backup for Office 365. There's backup for Salesforce.com. Those are things, that's why we acquired Spanning.
So that's great background and sort of sets up my next question, Stu, which is how do you research this stuff? So we used to research the plumbing, the connections underneath, which was what we spent time on VAI and who has the integration points and an exhaustive set of research. How have you changed your research, yourself, David Floyer, Nick Allen, to accommodate this changing ecosystem that Chad just described? And how are the horses, laying out in the track?
Yeah, so Dave, first of all, you're right. There was a lot of work that we needed to do to make sure that we had a contained scope, because cloud is really complicated and there's so many factors. Chad went through a whole bunch of them, and if we had tried to boil the ocean and give the landscape of cloud, forget it. It would have taken us a couple of years, and by the time we finished, we'd be 2 years out of date. So what we really focused on here was both extending what we had done for the last 3 or 4 years on VMware and extending the first part of that into really the hybrid cloud management and orchestration, but looking from the storage standpoint and for customers that are seeing VMware as one of their really strategic partners. And of course, there's many ways to skin this cat. If you look at the result of the research, EMC came out with the deepest integrations, which wasn't all that surprising. It's really kind of storage as a service, and some of the APIs from a management standpoint that storage companies can hook into.
You're absolutely right that this whole ecosystem view is an impossible problem to tackle. You prioritized, in my opinion, right, guys, because, again, talking with lots of customers, well, there's lots of interest in OpenStack, in how do Azure packs connect to the Azure domain. The reality amongst the enterprise is the vast majority of them are using VMware as the virtualization strata, and the vast majority of them are using the vRealize suite, previously the vCloud suite, as their M&O strata.
Chad, that's a great point, and that's where I know your vision for where Viper's going to bring EMC, because if I look at something like Amazon, they've just got a platform and they've got a ton of services that they can layer on top of that, and that portfolio, while it allows you to reach broad spectrum of the marketplace, you need to be able to make it easier for customers to be able to get all of the services across all of your options.
All right, guys, we got to leave it there. I'm sorry we're out of time. Chad, thanks so much for coming on, and Stu, appreciate you running down the research. You can check out that research on wikibon.org, and thanks for watching, everybody. This is CUBE Conversations with Stu Miniman and Chad Sakich and Dave Vellante. We'll see you next time.